The Ghost Captain of the Azure Sea. Part 1, The Whispering Sea. There are seas where even the gulls refuse to fly. Places where the water lies still and glass-like, as though afraid to move. They say that if you sail far enough east, past the black shoals and the edge of every charted map, you'll reach those waters, and hear the whispers of the dead beneath your hull. Few ships return from that voyage. And those that do, come back changed. This is the story of one that did. And of the ghost who captained her. The mariner's wager drifted into port 2 weeks late and without a soul aboard. She moved like a corpse on the tide, her sails torn, her decks empty. Only the sea's breath carried her in, nudging her toward the docks of Port Halvern under a pale dawn sky. The townsfolk gathered, whispering. Not a man aboard? Not a soul. She's cursed, mark me words. When the harbor master climbed the ladder onto her deck, he found every lamp still burning, as though the crew had vanished in the middle of the night. Logbook pages fluttered open in the wind. The last entry read. We saw her again tonight. The ship of blue fire. The one they call the Azure Wraith. And below that, in smaller letters. Captain Marin says we must follow her light. Says she leads to treasure beyond gold. After that, the ink trails off into a smear. Marin Vane had been many things before that final voyage. A smuggler, a privateer, a man with one eye on the horizon and one on his debts. But above all, he was a sailor, the kind born with salt in his blood. He captained the mariner's wager with a crew loyal enough to follow him into hell, though some claimed they already had. He'd lost his first ship in a storm off Caldiron's Reef, his brother to the gallows, and his heart to the sea itself. Those who knew him said the sea never gave him peace. And perhaps that's why he kept sailing, chasing something only he could see. There are many seas, but only one Azure. It's not marked on any map, not anymore. The Azure Sea is a legend sailors whisper when rum and fear mix deep into the night. They say it appears only once every decade, when the stars align in a shape like an eye, staring down from the heavens. In its gaze, the sea turns glass blue, shimmering with ghost light. Ships caught within vanish, not sunk, not destroyed, simply gone. The story always ends the same. A ghostly vessel of blue fire appears at dawn, her figurehead weeping seawater, her crew made of smoke. The story begins, truly begins, when Marin Vane found the compass. It was in a tavern in Port Halvern, half broken and crusted with salt. The seller was a pale old sailor with glassy eyes and a tremor in his hands. He claimed it pointed not north, but to what the heart desires most. Marin laughed, paid him 3 coins, and left it on his desk that night. But as the candlelight flickered out, he saw the needle move, turning slowly, deliberately, until it pointed straight east, toward the horizon beyond the harbor. And from far away, faintly, he heard the sound of a bell tolling beneath the waves. They set sail at dawn. The mariner's wager cut through calm waters under skies of rose and gold. Her crew, 32 men and 1 woman, the navigator Ilara Miles, worked in rhythm, their laughter bright and fearless. Ilara was the only one who looked uneasy. She'd seen that compass. Watched its needle twitch, even when the ship was still. Captain, she said quietly one night, if the sea hides something, maybe it's best left hidden. Marin smiled in that half-mad way sailors do when they've already made their choice. Every treasure worth finding was once meant to stay buried. And so they sailed east, farther than any chart dared to show. The first sign of trouble came 3 nights later. Fog rolled in from nowhere, thick as smoke, and the wind died. The world turned silent. The only sound was the slow creak of the ship's timbers. Ilara lit lanterns along the deck. The crew murmured prayers. Marin stood at the prow, compass in hand. The needle spun wildly, until it locked again, pointing dead ahead. Then they saw it. A faint light in the mist, blue as moonlit ice, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. A ship's light. Another vessel, the lookout called. But as the fog parted, what appeared before them was no ordinary ship. It was translucent, glowing with spectral flame. Her sails rippled though no wind touched them. On her bow was a name carved deep into rotting wood. The Azure Wraith. The ghost ship moved without sound, her wake leaving ripples of pale light. She turned slowly, beckoning, or luring. Marin felt something stir inside him, a pull deep as gravity. He raised the spyglass, but through it he saw only shadows on her deck, silhouettes of sailors long dead. And at the helm stood a woman in tattered captain's blues, her eyes glowing faintly from within. She lifted her hand. The gesture was not threat but invitation. Before anyone could stop him, Marin ordered full sail. The mariner's wager followed the phantom ship into the fog. The last thing Alara remembered before the world went silent was the sound of the sea itself, a deep, resonant note like the striking of a bell. Then came a flash of blue light, and everything went dark. When she woke, the fog had lifted. But the sea around them was unlike anything she'd ever seen. It shimmered, not with sunlight, but with its own glow, as if the water were alive. The stars above had shifted. The compass spun endlessly. And though the crew shouted and argued, none could tell which direction led home. They had crossed into the Azure Sea. That night, the crew heard voices. Not from the deck or the waves, but from beneath them, soft and melodic, like 1,000 distant whispers. One man leaned over the railing to listen. By morning, he was gone. They found his boots beside the rail, and the faint outline of a hand pressed into the deck, burned into the wood as if by lightning. The whispers came again the next night. And the night after that. By the 5th dawn, no one slept. Marin dreamed of the woman on the ghost ship, her eyes pale as the sea foam, her voice echoing like thunder through glass. She spoke his name. You followed the call, as I once did. He reached for her, but his hand passed through air. The sea stretched endlessly around them, calm and endless and blue. She turned toward the horizon, where something vast and glowing stirred beneath the surface. Find me, Marin, she said. Free me, or join me. He awoke drenched in seawater though his cabin was dry. The compass lay on the table, its needle fixed, pointing now not east, but straight down. Part 2, The Sea of Echoes. The sea was still as glass. No wind. No current. No horizon. The mariner's wager floated as if suspended in time itself. Marin stood over the compass, the needle quivering, locked on the deck beneath his boots. Down? Alara whispered. There's nothing down but the deep. He stared into the shimmering waves. Then that's where we're meant to go. The crew muttered behind him, talk of madness, curses, drowned souls. But when the captain's voice rose, the noise stopped. Every sea has its secrets, Marin said quietly. Ours is waiting beneath. That night, he ordered the anchor dropped. But when the chain reached its end, there was no bottom, only more chain, vanishing endlessly into the glowing deep. Something down there was calling. It began as a hum beneath the hull. Low at first, almost like wind caught in the sails. Then stronger, a melody rising from the sea itself, beautiful and wrong all at once. The crew clutched their ears, some weeping, some laughing as if drunk. The sound passed through wood and bone alike. Alara found Marin standing at the prow, his eyes glassy. She's singing, he murmured. The woman from my dream. Captain, she said sharply, there is no woman. There is no ship. You're chasing ghosts. He turned toward her. But ghosts remember what the living forget. The water beneath them began to glow brighter, pulsing with the rhythm of the song. Shapes moved below, faint, shifting, human-like. And then, a voice. Clear, close and cold as the depths. Captain Vane, you've come far enough to see what lies beneath. The voice echoed across the still air. Every man froze. Merrin stepped forward, peering into the blue glow. Beneath the ship, a face took shape, a woman's face, vast and shimmering, like a reflection without a body. Her eyes burned pale blue. "Who are you?" Merrin demanded. The face smiled faintly. "The sea remembers its captains." And then she spoke his name, not Merrin, but Meran Vale, a name he hadn't used since his youth. Only Alara knew that name, and she looked at him in shock. "What does she mean?" Merrin didn't answer. His past, long buried, was stirring again. The woman's voice continued. "You sailed under false names, stole from kings, and fled from death. But the Azure Sea knows truth. It called to you because you are like me, a thief who couldn't stop taking." He gripped the railing. "What do you want?" "To finish what we began." The sea erupted in light. For a heartbeat, everyone saw it, a ruined city beneath the water, towers of coral and stone, statues of drowned kings, and at its heart, the ghost ship itself, anchored to the seabed. Then the light vanished, and the sea went still again. The next morning, the crew was in chaos. Half wanted to flee, the rest were too afraid to move. Merrin gathered them on deck. "You saw it," he said. "There's a city beneath us. And a ship, hers. Whatever curse haunts these waters began there." Ilara's voice trembled. "And you mean to go down there?" He nodded. "If that's what it takes to bring us home." They built what they could, weighted diving lines, barrels sealed with pitch, ropes knotted to guide them back. Old sailors' tricks against an impossible depth. When they descended, the water burned cold as starlight. Shapes drifted past, fish of glass, ruins of ships half swallowed by coral, bones wrapped in kelp. And then, through the glow, the city appeared, half dream, half nightmare. At its center, moored between two broken towers, was the Azure Wraith. Merrin's boots touched the seabed. The world around him pulsed with dim light, as though the ocean itself were breathing. He walked toward the ghost ship. No sound. No motion. Only that faint blue shimmer. At the gangplank stood the woman from his dream, her uniform tattered, her hair drifting in invisible current. "Captain Vale," she said softly. "You've finally come home." He stared at her. "I don't know you." "You knew me once," she said. "Before the sea took us both. Before you left me to die." Her name came to him like a wound reopening. Saren. The ghost captain smiled. "You remember. Years ago, before he became Merrin Vane, he had served under Captain Saren Arlen, the youngest, fiercest privateer on the Azure coast. They'd hunted treasure together, turned on empires together. She had trusted him more than anyone. Until the day they found the relic, an orb of blue crystal said to hold the voice of the sea itself. They called it the Heart of Tides. When greed came between them, Merrin betrayed her. He took the relic and fled, leaving Saren and her crew to sink beneath a storm he'd unleashed. Now, she stood before him once more, not living, not dead. "You brought the heart back to me," she said. "You just didn't know it." He looked down at the compass, the same one that had guided him here. Inside its cracked glass, the faintest glow pulsed. The heart had changed shape, but not essence. The compass was the relic. "You took my life," Saren said. "Now the sea takes yours. Unless..." Merrin's voice was rough. "Unless what?" "Unless you said it right. The Azure Sea is not a curse, but a prison, a wound made by our greed. Return the heart to the depths, where it belongs, and both our souls will be free." He hesitated. "And my crew?" "The sea keeps what it is owed. But you may bargain for them." Ilara's voice broke through the silence. She'd followed him down, her figure dim through the water's glow. "Captain, we have to go. This isn't our fight." Marin turned to her. "It became our fight the moment we followed the light." He held the compass up. "If I give this back, will you let them go?" Saren's eyes softened. A captain's word is his bond, even in death. Marin walked to the edge of the city, a chasm yawning below, black and endless. He looked at the compass one last time. Its glow was steady now, like a heartbeat. He thought of every voyage, every friend lost, every lie told to chase something brighter than himself. And then, quietly, he let the compass fall. It drifted downward, its light fading as it sank. When it vanished, the sea shuddered, a deep tremor that echoed through the ruins. The water brightened, the light spreading like dawn through the dark. The city began to crumble, the ghost ship dissolving into mist. Saren looked at him, peaceful for the first time. "You kept your word." She reached out, her hand passing through his. "May the tide carry you home." The world blurred into blue. Ilara woke gasping on the deck of the mariner's wager. The sky was gray. The sea, ordinary, calm, endless. The crew lay scattered around her, alive. No glow, no whispers, no ghost ship in sight. She stumbled to the helm. The compass was gone. And Captain Marin Vane was nowhere to be found. For days, they searched. But all they found was a single carving on the wheel, words etched deep into the wood. Every treasure worth finding was once meant to stay buried. Years passed. Sailors still spoke of the Azure Sea, though some said it vanished when the mariner's wager returned. Ilara became captain in Marin's stead. She kept no compass, no relics, no maps. Only a promise. Sometimes, on moonless nights, when the sea is too still and the sky too wide, she swears she sees a faint blue light on the horizon, a ghostly ship sailing just beyond reach. And when the wind is right, she hears a voice on the waves, quiet and sure. "Hold fast, Ilara. The sea remembers its captains." Part 3, The Tide Remembers. 15 years passed since the mariner's wager returned without its captain. The tale of the Azure Sea drifted into legend, a story told by drunk sailors and disbelieving children. Ilara Miles, now Captain Miles of the Silver Gull, sailed new routes, carried cargo for kings, and kept her promise never to chase ghosts. But some nights, when the stars burned faintly blue and the tide rose too high, she'd look out over the railing and think she saw another ship moving just beneath the waves. A pale light. A shadow of a man at the helm. And the faint, familiar sound of a bell tolling beneath the water. She told herself it was just the sea playing tricks. But deep down, she wasn't sure. One morning, a small fishing vessel brought in a boy from the outer islands, sunburned, half-starved, clutching something in his hands. He said his name was Kale. Said he'd found something washed ashore after a storm, something that wouldn't stop glowing at night. When he opened his hand, Ilara felt her breath catch. It was the compass. The same cracked glass, the same iron casing. The glow faint but unmistakable. "Where did you find this?" she asked. "Washed up on the black sands of Yoran Isle," the boy said. It hums when I hold it." Ilara took it gently. For a moment, she swore she heard waves echoing far away, waves from another world. She locked the compass away in her cabin and told herself she'd throw it overboard the next dawn. But when morning came, she couldn't bring herself to do it. The next week, the skies darkened without warning. Wind screamed out of nowhere, tearing sails, snapping ropes. The Silver Gull was driven far off course. By nightfall, the storm broke into silence, too sudden, too complete. The crew stood in stunned quiet. The sea glowed faintly again. And there it was. A faint light on the horizon, moving slowly across the dark water. blue fire dancing on invisible sails. Ilara's heart stopped. It was the Azure Wraith. The ghost ship drew nearer, her hull shimmering like smoke. Ilara gripped the rail. "You should have stayed buried," she whispered. A figure stood on the phantom deck, tall, broad-shouldered, his coat flowing like mist. Marin Vane. He looked unchanged, eyes burning faintly blue. But there was peace in his face, not torment. "Captain Miles," his voice carried across the water like a tide. "You kept them safe." Ilara trembled. "You're dead, Marin." He smiled. "The sea doesn't let go that easily." Behind him, faint figures moved, his old crew, half visible, watching her silently. "The curse ended," she said. "I saw the city fall. I saw you free her." He said. "But the sea still remembers what men forget. The Azure wakes once every generation, searching for one who can carry the burden. The compass has found another." He looked past her, to the boy Cale standing at the bow, wide-eyed. "The sea's chosen him," Marin said. Ilara felt her stomach twist. "No," she said quietly. "He's a child." "The sea doesn't care for age," Marin said. "Only for truth. The boy holds the compass, and so the sea holds him." Cale stepped forward. "Is it true," he asked softly, "that there's a whole city down there?" Ilara wanted to lie, to say no. But the glow and the water answered for her. Marin reached out a spectral hand. "He doesn't need to make my mistakes. If he learns to listen, the Azure will guide him, not curse him." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and old memories. Ilara met Marin's eyes. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "My watch is ending. The tide calls me home." The sea brightened once more, glowing brighter than moonlight. The Azure Wraith began to fade, her hull turning to mist. Marin's voice carried one last time. Tell him the sea remembers its captains." And then he was gone. The light sank beneath the waves, leaving only darkness and the sound of the wind returning. Cale looked out over the water, the compass in his hands. "It's pointing west now," he whispered. Ilara rested a hand on his shoulder. "Then that's where we go." Years later, sailors spoke of a young captain who could read the sea like a map and calm storms with a word. They said he carried an old compass that glowed with blue fire. They said his ship never lost its way, that when the fog grew too thick, a ghostly vessel sometimes appeared alongside, guiding him through. Some swore they saw two captains on its deck, one of flesh, one of mist, sailing side by side into a horizon that never ended. And though the sea holds its secrets close, there is one truth all sailors know. The ocean remembers every promise, every sin, every soul it ever claimed. It forgets nothing. Not the ghosts who haunt it. Not the captains who love it. And somewhere, in the deep beyond maps, the Azure Sea still glows beneath the stars, waiting for the next fool brave enough to follow its call. Epilogue: The Compass and the Bell. A century later, a fisherman off the coast of Port Helvern found something tangled in his net, a compass, cracked and silent, its glow long gone. He placed it on his shelf, thinking it nothing more than a trinket. That night, as the tide rose, a faint bell tolled far beneath the waves. And for the briefest moment, the sea shone blue.